Imagine a single dollar growing into $1,000 without you ever lifting a finger. That isn't magic, it's math, and it's the secret sauce behind most of the world's millionaires. Most people think wealth comes from huge salaries or lucky breaks. But the real engine is something you can start the moment you get your first paycheck. You've probably heard the phrase time is money. But what if time could literally multiply the money you already have? In the next few minutes we'll unpack the exact math that turns modest savings into massive fortunes, and we'll see why a small habit started in your 20s can outpace a high-earning career started in your 30s. First, picture yourself at a coffee shop watching the bars to steam milk for a latte. While the steam rises, your money can be doing something far more impressive, growing on its own. That growth isn't a rumor, it's a predictable exponential curve that anyone can ride. The concept of compound interest dates back to the 17th century, when mathematicians first realized that interest could earn interest. It's the same principle that makes the snowball roll faster as it gathers more snow. The difference is that with money, the snowball can keep rolling forever as long as you keep it moving. Now let's set the stage. You have a modest paycheck, maybe $3,000 a month after taxes. You can't afford a luxury car or a vacation to Bali, but you can set aside a small portion, say $200 a month. That amount seems tiny, but over a career it can become a life-changing sum, especially if you let it compound. The key ingredients are three: the principle, what you start with, the rate, how fast it grows, and time, how long you let it sit. Change any one of those, and the outcome shifts dramatically. Let's start with the pure math. The compound interest formula looks intimidating at first. It equals P times 1 plus R over N to the power of N times T. In plain English, A is the amount you'll have at the end, P is the starting amount, R is the annual interest rate expressed as a decimal, N is how many times per year interest is added, and T is the number of years you leave it alone. If you plug in numbers, the picture becomes crystal clear. Take a $1,000 investment at a 7% annual return, compounded once per year. After 1 year you have $1,070. After 2 years you don't just add another $70. You add 7% of $1,070, which is $74.90, bringing you to $1,144.90. Each year the added interest grows a little bigger because it's calculated on a larger base. By the time you hit 10 years, the $1,000 has swelled to about $1,967. That's almost double with no extra deposits. The curve is gentle at first, then it steepens like a roller coaster that climbs slowly before plunging down. Now, imagine you keep adding $200 every month to that same 7% vehicle. After 10 years, you'll have roughly $38,000. It sounds impressive, but the real magic appears when you stretch the timeline to 20 or 30 years. At the 20-year mark, the total climbs to around $115,000. At 30 years, you're looking at close to $260,000. Those numbers aren't just the sum of your contributions. They're the sum of contributions plus the compounded growth on each contribution. The longer the horizon, the more each early dollar snowballs. Here's a retention bump. If you invest $10,000 at an 8% return and never touch it, after 30 years you'll have over $100,000. That's a tenfold increase, and it happens without any additional effort. The math is simple, the result is staggering. Let's bring this into a real-world scenario: retirement savings. Suppose you start a 401k at age 25, contributing $300 each month, and your employer matches 50% of the first $300. That means $450 goes into the account each month. If the portfolio averages a 6% return, by the time you reach 65, you'll have amassed roughly $1.3 million. Now, compare that to someone who waits until age 35 to start the same contributions. Even though they invest the same $450 each month for 30 years, they end up with just over $500,000. The early starter's advantage is more than double, solely because of the extra 10 years of compounding. Ask yourself, what would you do if you knew that starting 10 years earlier could add $1 million to your nest egg? It's not a thought experiment. It's a reality that many financial planners point to. The difference isn't the amount you put in. It's the time you give that money to work. Let's dig deeper with a side-by-side story. Meet Alex and Jamie. Both earn $60,000 a year. Both decide to save 10% of their salary. Alex begins at age 22, right after college, putting $500 a month into a low-cost index fund. Jamie, convinced she needs to pay off student loans first, waits until age 32 to start the same habit. Both earn an average 7% return. When they both retire at 65, Alex's account sits at roughly $1.2 million, while Jamie's balance is at about $350,000. Alex didn't earn more, she simply let her money sit longer. That story is repeated thousands of times across the country, and it illustrates a core truth. Compound interest rewards patience more than any high-earning strategy. Now consider how often interest is added. The formula includes N, the compounding frequency. If you receive interest annually, you get 1 boost per year. If it's monthly, you get 12. Daily compounding gives you 365 chances. The effect may seem minor, but over long periods it adds up. Let's take a $5,000 investment at 5% annual interest. Compounded annually, after 20 years you have $13,267. Compounded monthly, the same amount grows to $13,447. Compounded daily, it reaches $13,470. The difference is a few $100s, but if you scale that up to larger balances and longer horizons, those extra fractions become sizable. A quick retention bump. The rule of 72 tells you roughly how many years it takes to double an investment. Divide 72 by the annual interest rate. At 6%, you double in about 12 years. At 9%, you double in 8 years. This rule works because of the exponential nature of compounding, and it's a handy mental shortcut that anyone can use to gauge growth without a calculator. What about inflation? Money today isn't worth the same as money tomorrow. If inflation runs at 2% per year, a 5% nominal return actually yields a 3% real return. That still compounds, just a bit slower. Over 30 years, a $10,000 investment at a 3% real return becomes about $24,000 in today's purchasing power. The key takeaway is that you must aim for returns that outpace inflation to truly grow wealth. Historically, diversified stock market indexes have delivered real returns around 5 to 7%, which is why they're the go-to vehicles for long-term investors. Let's explore an unexpected twist. Tiny, regular contributions can explode when compounded. Imagine you decide to save just $5 a week, perhaps from a coffee you skip. That's $260 a year. If you invest that amount in a fund earning 7%, after 40 years you'll have about $115,000. That's more than 40 times the total amount you ever put in. The secret is consistency and time. Even a modest habit, repeated without fail, can outpace occasional large windfalls. Another retention bump. Did you know that the average millionaire in the United States didn't inherit wealth? More than 80% earned their fortune through disciplined saving and investing, not through lottery tickets or windfalls. Common denominator? Compounding. Now, let's talk about the psychological side. Human brains are wired to favor immediate gratification. We see $1 today as more valuable than $1 tomorrow, a bias known as hyperbolic discounting. That's why many people struggle to save. But understanding the exponential curve can rewire that instinct. If you picture each dollar you save as a seed that will eventually become a towering oak, the urge to plant more becomes stronger. Consider a visual analogy, a small garden plot. If you plant a single seed, it sprouts, then bears fruit, then those fruits contain more seeds and the garden expands. The growth isn't linear, it accelerates as the garden fills. Money works the same way. The earlier you plant, the larger the garden you can harvest later. Let's bring the math back to a concrete, everyday decision. Choosing between a $5,000 bonus now or a $5,000 contribution to a retirement account. If you take the cash and spend it, you'll enjoy it for a few weeks, then it's gone. If you invest it at a 7% return, in 20 years it becomes $19,500, and in 30 years it swells to $38,000. That future purchasing power can fund a down payment on a house, a child's education, or a comfortable retirement. The decision is stark when you see the numbers. A surprising fact: the power of compounding doesn't require a huge initial sum. The majority of wealth accumulation comes from the middle of the curve, not the beginning. In other words, the bulk of your future wealth is generated by the interest on interest, not just the original principal. This counters the common belief that you need to be rich to get rich. You can start with almost nothing and still reap massive benefits, provided you stay the course. Now, let's examine a scenario that flips the script. What if you withdraw early? Suppose you have $100,000 at age 55 and you decide to cash out and spend it over 5 years. You lose not only the principal, but also the future compounding that could have turned that $100,000 into $300,000 by age 70. That opportunity cost is often overlooked, yet it's the hidden price of premature consumption. Consider another retention bump. If you let $1,000 sit for 40 years at a 7% return, it grows to over $14,000. That's a 1,300% increase. It's not just the dollars, it's the power to change life trajectories. Let's discuss the impact of tax-advantaged accounts. A traditional IRA or a Roth IRA lets your investments grow without annual taxes eating into the returns. In a taxable account, capital gains and dividends are taxed each year, reducing the effective compounding rate. For instance, if you earn 8% before tax and pay a 20% tax on gains each year, your net growth drops to about 6.4%. Over 30 years, that 1.6% difference can shave off tens of thousands of dollars. This is why many financial advisors stress the importance of maxing out tax-sheltered accounts first. Now let's imagine a scenario involving two siblings, Meyer and Leo. Both receive a $20,000 inheritance at age 30. Maya immediately invests it in a diversified portfolio, letting it compound. Leo keeps the money in a savings account earning 0.5%. After 30 years, Maya's investment has ballooned to roughly $150,000, while Leo's balance sits at about $35,000. The disparity isn't about the amount inherited, it's about where the money was placed. The lesson is clear. The vehicle matters as much as the seed. We've covered the math, the time factor, frequency, inflation, taxes, psychological hurdles, and real-world stories. All these pieces fit together to illustrate one core truth. Compound interest is the most reliable, low-effort engine for building wealth. It works silently, without any extra work from you after the initial decision to invest. Now for the twist that often catches people off guard. Many assume that to become a millionaire you need a six-figure salary. In reality, a series of modest, disciplined investments can achieve that status even on a modest income. The key isn't how much you earn, it's how much you let work for you over time. A study of millionaires shows that the median net worth was built through consistent contributions of less than $300 a month, compounded over 30 to 40 years. The millionaire label, then, is less about extraordinary earnings and more about ordinary habits applied consistently. Think about this. If you save $250 a month starting at age 20, with a 7% return, you'd cross the $1 million threshold by age 58. That's less than $3,000 a year, a fraction of many people's annual expenses. The math is simple, the discipline is the challenge. Let's bring the conversation back to you, the listener. You've just heard how a tiny seed can become a towering oak, how a few extra years can double your wealth, and how the frequency of compounding adds hidden gains. You've also seen the pitfalls of early withdrawal and the tax advantages that can accelerate growth. All of these insights converge on one actionable point. Start now, invest consistently, and let the math do the heavy lifting. What if you could rewrite your financial future with a single decision today? Imagine opening an account, setting up an automatic $100 transfer, and watching it grow for the next 3 decades. You won't feel the change day to day, but the compounding effect will be unmistakable when you check the balance years later. The future you will thank you for the patience you showed today. Now, before we close, here's a final retention bump. The magic number for many investors is 7%. Historically, a diversified stock market index has returned about 7% after inflation. If you can capture that average, you're on a path that most professional investors would envy. It's not a guarantee, but it's a realistic benchmark. So what will you do with this knowledge? Will you let the snowball sit idle, or will you give it a push and watch it roll downhill? The choice is yours, and the timing is now. If you could start a compounding habit today, what amount would you set aside, and how long would you commit to letting it grow?